Hi there, it's Cream from Keeper's Nursery. It is the 21st of March 2024. Well, hey, it is finally spring and lots of things are in bloom. Lots of fruit trees are in bloom. So I'm going to make a short video about some of the early blossom that we have in the nursery at this time of the year. So right here next to me is one of the most spectacular blossoms of the season. It is peach blossom, and this is the Saturn peach. So that's one of the flat sort of donut shaped peaches. As you can see, the flowers are abundant and they are lovely and pink. It is produces more flowers, this type of peach, this variety, than most other peaches. So this one right here is Amsden June, which is relatively good peach. It shows some signs of peach leaf curl resistance. Saturn doesn't really, but Avalon Pride is probably the best variety to grow if you're growing them out and about. This is actually an Avalon Pride tree right here. That was out of focus, but that's great. So yeah, most other peaches, you need to grow them under cover if you don't want the peach leaf curl. The only problem with them is that they don't get as much light unless you've actually got glass, which we don't. We've got the cheaper plastic stuff. And therefore the fruits actually taste better, even though some of the varieties out and about will get, well, they'll get quite bad peach leaf curl in the early spring. The fruits will actually taste slightly better than under glass. So some peach flowers, that one's actually a nectarine flower here, that's pineapple. Some peach flowers are much less pronounced because basically the petals are very, very small, and a little bit disappointing. I mean, they do actually look a bit ill, but they're fine. You can see the leaves are starting to come out soon. So basically, peach flowers are in... Actually, there's quite a few here that are like that. Peach flowers are in flower... Well, peach trees are in flower from about sort of late February in England. Here we have almond flowers. So almond flowers are very pretty. You got the lovely 5 petals. This one is Princess, so that's white with red in the middle. So it's slightly more similar to a apricot tree. And then something like this, which is Ingrid. If I can focus it, yeah, Ingrid is pink. So Ingrid is a lovely, and these do smell quite nice. So you get lovely, lovely flowers on almond trees. Those are very early, so those will be in flower from February as well. So basically under here we've got lots and lots of different peaches. So the bees love this area at this time of the year. And as I said, I grow them under there so that they don't get the peach leaf curl. And this one right here is the Avalon Pride, which unfortunately is one of the sort of less pretty flowers, but you know, it produces nice fruit. So one of the earliest, well, the earliest like prunus flower that you get is this is cherry plum blossom. Cherry plum blossom is basically finished. So some years you'll get this actually at my birthday in early February. Not many bees around at that time of the year, unfortunately, but this one actually bears a lot of fruit. This is just the red cherry plum, so it's a native tree to these parts. You sort of find them in hedgerows. You can see they're in leaf now as well. Basically this will be absolutely covered in small cherry plums, which are about the size of sort of ping pong balls, and they're not the best tasting fruits. If you pick them early, they can be a bit sharp, and then you let them go from yellow to sort of red to dark red, and they're sweet, but there's not much else to them, and I don't really pick them, but all that fruit will fall straight on the floor. And then in sort of July time, there will be, every night there will just be about 3 or 4 badgers under this tree having a yummy time. So here we've got this is an Asian pear, so you can see pears are almost ripe. So as I said, it's the 21st of March. This is about, I think things are a few weeks early, but it seems consistently things are a few weeks early these days, so that seems sort of normal now. So walking into the nursery, you can see I've finished planting all my rootstocks out here. That took, well, It's the only two-man job of the year, and it took 4 days and 3 hours to do it. A lot of effort. We were doing about 1,600 a day by hand. This is Saturn peach here again. So with the going back to the, oh yeah, it is better looking than most others. This kestrel's nice as well. So going back to the rootstocks, it takes about 3 days, 3.5 days to actually trim the roots, and then beyond that it takes I should probably move on to the apricots. It takes a further, yeah, as I said, so overall in about a week, but there were rainy days where it prevented work, and they're planted in rows, about 35 centimeters between each tree and about 2.4 meters between each row. And this is the first year that I'm doing them in single rows to see how they grow. Maybe they're easier to maintain. So under here on this west facing wall, I have got, if I get a bit closer you'll see, apricot blossom. Now apricots are gorgeous. This blossom, because you've got the yellow and then you've got the white and the red, and that is, and this is without any, so these haven't got into leaf yet, so basically these won't be in leaf when that happens, and I think that is gorgeous because it's a very sort of it's not as showy as the peach. The peach is pink, pink petals. If you're into Japanese cherry trees, the flowering cherry trees, the pink ones are very showy, but the sort of the real lovers of it actually like the white blossom more. Pink is extremely sort of in your face. It's a little bit garish. Nothing wrong with it, but I like this sort of thing where you get the white and the red and a subtle bit of sort of color to the white. So some of these are now in leaf. These have been in flower for a while, so some of these varieties like Goldcott, they've finished flowering now. You can see the petals come off. That would have been, so the petals are all on the floor. That would have been pretty recent. So they're doing okay. So yeah, this time of the year there's a lot to do on the nursery. It's all guns blazing basically. Wet weather, you take a day off. Dry weather, I've got lots of topping to do on the new sort of 1-year-old trees. I've got I'm planning to do some cross-pollination, so that will probably be in quite a few weeks' time actually with the apples, because I'm coming to the apples now to show you how they are doing. But yeah, I'll do the apples first, and generally just training the new trees, it's effort, it takes a bit of time, so I am quite busy, but the days are much longer, which is nice. So over here we've got the apple cordons. On my right hand side there are about 20 or so crabapple trees. So crabapple trees, these are sort of ornamental, but they are still fruiting trees, so you know, important. I guess you can breed from them, but these are very small crab apples, which, so here are some that stayed on the tree from last year. Not much value to the fruits in my opinion, but they produce loads and loads of blossom. You can see how many sort of ballooned sort of blossoms, and they are much earlier though than dessert apple trees. So here are the dessert apple trees in comparison. These swollen fruit buds, so the whole tree looks dormant apart from these sort of green tips here, and these green tips are basically fruit buds that have now swollen. Goodness, I wish this camera would just focus. There you go. So you can see leaves come out and you get petals. You get a little cluster of petals. I'll show you what it looks like on a pear, because that's effectively the same thing but slightly more advanced. These should come into flower probably now in mid-April. Traditionally apples in Kent were given, well, they were given numbers, sort of 1 to about 30 I suppose, and that was supposed to be which day in May they flowered, but nowadays you generally expect them in April unless something really weird happens with the weather and it's very, very cold. So in comparison you can see how much more advanced some of these crab apples are. Some are like this one, this profusion improved. It's got red petals, so this one is very advanced in comparison. You can even see some growth here. This is actually new vegetative growth, so it's even cracking on with growing. Again, loads and loads of blooms. This one here, Floribunda, is a beautiful cherry plum, crab apple, beg your pardon. you can just see how many petals there are on these sorts of things. This one is royalty, nice dark red one. So yeah, and in comparison, most of these apples here, so this is a very good example of how an apple is growing. This is red Falstaff. These on this stick here, so this is new growth, which wasn't actually pruned because it was too short. So in cordons, I generally would prune these back. The tip has turned into a flower here. There's a flower bud there. You've got several flower buds here and here and here, and then these ones which are sort of lagging behind, which haven't really swollen, these are just leaf buds. These won't turn into flowers this year, and generally these will all open up, and you know, you'll get a growth out there, you'll get growth out here, and you'll get growth out here. So these are important for training your tree to sort of see which angle you want to grow the tree. So generally what we would do is, if we wanted I mean, if this was pruned, it would have been cut here so that this bud, which is downwards facing, would be the sort of more dominant shoot, because you want the shoots to generally go down and out. You don't want strong vertical growth, you want nice, when you are training a cordon, you want sort of downward horizontal growth as opposed to vertical. Vertical growth would become too dominant, and the idea of a oblique cordon is that, as you can see, the whole tree has a sort of co-dominance. Every part of the tree seems to be roughly the same girth. So the wood down here, see, that's relatively thick, but the wood up here is the same thickness roughly. If you grew the tree vertically, the top would be, you know, 3-4 times as thick as anything down there. But the idea is, if you do a oblique cordon, everything is, you know, relatively the same thickness. You don't get much growth going downwards. So here is an example. The tree is not bothering to grow downwards much, but at the same time, the stuff going upwards isn't that much thicker than the stuff coming out sideways here. So that's quite a huge benefit of training trees as oblique cordons. You also get, you know, economy of space, and in general they look nice. So I'm just going to show you some cherry plums. Sorry, I keep saying cherry plum. I've got cherry plums on the mind. Sorry about the noise, there's a lorry coming. So here we've got plums. Plums are probably my favourite blossoms of the year, and I'll show you why. So here you can see plum blossom, and you can see all of these blossoms here. Sorry about all that noise, there's a truck coming. All of these blossoms, all of these ballooned flowers will turn into lovely white blossoms, and you get no actual sort of leaf growth. So you can see this tree will turn into a giant white, sort of gorgeous cloud, as it were, and the flowers smell unbelievable. These are the nicest smelling flowers. I guess apples also smell as good, but in comparison, sort of pear flowers smell pretty awful, and the bees absolutely love this. And you can see the whole thing goes white before the new growth. So plum blossom is, you know, I think it's the creme de la creme. In comparison here, this is a Japanese cherry. This is, label's gone, but you can see these are huge, double, triple, I don't know how many petals they've got, but if I pick one, take it back to, I mean, that is actually a gorgeous flower. So this is what I was saying, the sort of stylish white flowers look better than the pink ones, because the pink ones are showy. So in comparison, that's the size difference between a I mean, these are both prunus, obviously. That's a cherry, this is a plum, but similar. And originally the wild one would have had sort of 5 petals. These are all done in sort of 5s. Petals are in, you know, some flowers have got 6s. So if you think of a lily, it's got 6s. If you think of a crucifera, so like brassicas, they've got 4s. Apples have got 5s. Most roses have got 5s. So this, you could think this is primitive. This is the sort of advanced level someone's been breeding, but you can see it's much bigger. So Japanese cherries are very, very showy. I'll keep that flower, it was quite nice. Sorry about the noise, that's the wood chipper. Didn't time this video well. They've just arrived. We're having some work done on a big horse chestnut tree, which unfortunately is getting well, it's just getting pollarded. It's not getting killed because I wouldn't do that. So finally, no, or not quite finally, these are now the pear trees. Pear trees are slightly more advanced, as you can see, than the apple trees at the same stage of the season. So you get these sort of very obvious fruit buds. You do get the leaves on them as well. So unlike the plums, you get lots of leaf growth as well, and they are very pretty flowers. So here's one that is very early. This one is Bien Chaton. Lovely looking thing. They don't smell nice. There's something about them which is pretty, but I also find them, I guess they look a bit like hydrangeas. They're not my favorite. They are nice though. They are early, but I think apples look and smell nicer. Generally these will all be white. Apples, you get sort of pinks and rose colored ones as well as the white. Apples in every way are nicer than these pear ones because they're just better versions. And then if you think about it, as I said, the plum blossoms, the whole tree turns into a white cloud, as opposed to just, I guess it's as opposed to just clusters of flowers on the ends of spurs. So, and I mean, plum blossom smells nicer, and the smell is quite important. So back there you've got some plum trees, which the cordon train plum trees, those will all be white soon. But that gives you an idea of the timing. Sort of plums come out at the same time as the pears do. And finally, to the more unusual stuff, the quinces and the medlers. I suppose we'll look at cherries in a sec as well, because I will go down to the cherries. Medlers are way behind. They've barely even come into leaf or anything. The one thing about quinces come into leaf extremely early. So in February the quinces will come into leaf, but they will not come into flower until a bit later. So none of these have got any flowers on. You can't really see flowers on these, but if you look very carefully in there, where these fluffy things are the leaves, and then these are the sepals here, which are slightly more serrated at the ends. So on the end of each of these will be a flower. They'll be sort of the size of a 50p when they come out, so they're quite big flowers. Not that big, I suppose, sort of that big. Generally a whitish or pink. You get one, you don't get clusters, you get one on each tip. Generally that's what a tip bearer is. I'm going to climb under here. Ew. Lovely stuff. And finally we're going to look at the cherries. So cherries, these are not the flowering cherries, the Japanese ones. These are sweet cherries. I mean, it'll be the same timings for the sour cherries as well. So here are some flowers. They are not quite open yet. You do get sort of big sort of clusters before the leaf, although at the tips you get leaves. It's different because basically they're very different flower buds with cherries. So you get loads and loads of flower buds, which will literally only be flower buds, and then you get some growth. So generally what happens is down the bottom of a new branch, flower, 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 and then at the tip, growth, growth, growth. So I guess the idea is basically the tree wants to continue the top to grow, and then it thinks, okay, the stuff at the back, I'll do flowers. And this is very typical. So here again, you can see some of these are almost looking like they're going to flower, but the tip has got leaves, but there's no leaf buds at the bottom. I'll show you more examples. Here again, you get flower buds all the way up here, and then at the tip, you get leaf buds. So that's cherries, and cherries are very nice flowers. They're known quite a lot for their flowers, but generally people sort of, when they think of cherry blossom, they're actually thinking of Japanese flowering cherries, which are, you know, different. They're quite different actually, to be fair. They don't produce fruit, and as you saw, they're slightly other. I was just going to show you some pears. So this is actually a red pear with slightly red flesh, so that actually has slightly pinky blossom as well, but actually some of these are pink on the ends. Yeah, so it's basically the outside of some of the petals will be pink, does look nice. I like slightly rosy sorts of things. So that's about it for flowers. I suppose the only other flowers, if you've got cornelian cherries, those are flowering. The yellow flowers are out in, I mean that's a dogwood, but that's in February time. And then if you, yeah, there's not really many other flowers to talk about. But yeah, flowers are great. So hopefully you've got flowers where you are. If you're interested in breeding, it's important to know when the flowers will be ripe. As you can see, all different varieties flower at slightly different stages as well. So you really have to sort of know your tree as to when to harvest the pollen and when to actually do the pollinations. If I was pollinating these, I would sort of bag sections. I'm not doing pears because apples are enough, but yeah, you'd bag off a section of a branch just to sort of stop any pollinators going in. I have seen pollinators, you know, bees around, bumblebees are around, butterflies and all sorts. So yeah, hopefully everyone is aware of when things go into flower. If you live in towns, I think right now in England you'll generally see slightly more flowers because it's slightly warmer. Although it stopped being cold, it was quite warm yesterday. It was about 15 degrees. It was a lovely day. So yeah, hopefully it's a lovely sort of nice spring from here on out, so that there is good pollination, because you need a sort of warm temperatures for good pollination. If it were to, I suppose the apples aren't out yet. Let's just focus on apples. Actually, we'll talk about plums, because in the last few years the plums have really been pounded by the bad weather. So right now, when the plums are now in flower, if we suddenly get a cold spell, we get too much wind, we get too much rain, you will actually notice the knock-on effect that there just isn't much fruit this year. And that's a real shame, but that happens. That's happened quite a few times, maybe two out the last 3 years. There's been barely any fruit on the plum trees. It's just, it seems that autumn is generally quite warm and mild in Kent, and unfortunately the spring is a bit disappointing. That COVID year was lovely. March 20, what was it, 23rd of March 2020. Boy, the sun just came out for about a month then. But yeah, most years after that it's just been rain, rain, wind, wind, frost even. We've had frost in sort of late April, early May a few years ago. So it happens. I don't know what's going to happen, but hopefully it's a fruitful year for everyone all over the world if you're there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll make more videos soon. Bye bye.